Hey, this is the Fight Nerd, and joining me now is a legend in the sport of mixed martial arts, Gary Big Daddy Goodridge. Gary, how are you tonight?
I'm almost wonderful. I'm working on the rest.
All right, now coming up in February, you're releasing your new autobiography called Gatekeeper, The Fighting Life of Gary Goodridge. Now, Gatekeeper has been a term that's been used for your career a lot by reporters and journalists, so why did you go to choose that as the title of the book?
Well, because, you know what? It was actually chose for me. There was a bunch of names that was put forth, but it seemed more fitting to be a gatekeeper simply because that's where I was for 13 years of my career, prior gatekeeper.
That's true, and we're going to talk a lot more about Pride as we go into this interview, but before that, we got to talk about the past of Gary, and that was basically arm wrestling. That's where you got your start in competition. In the book, you actually mentioned that you were part of the Over the Top film with Stallone. So how was that experience for you?
You know what? That was the first time I had anything to do with TV. And, wow, it was such a big thing. I really learned the understanding of hurry up and wait. I understood what that meant. Because, when you're making a film, it's just that, hurry up and wait.
When you were filming the movie also, you didn't really get a chance to say anything to Sylvester Stallone, right?
No, see, the thing was that I was too big for my britches. I was thinking everybody was going up and taking their pictures and getting him to sign the this and the that and, shake his hand. And I thought I was too good for that. But soon after the experience finished, the day after, I was so pissed off that I never did that because people had pictures of Stallone. Everyone had a picture of this or that, and I had nothing but memories. So I was pretty upset.
I think one of the best parts of the book for me was when you explained about your UFC debut, how you were listed as a Cook Sloan fighter when technically you weren't a Cook Sloan fighter. So can you explain that story to our listeners?
Well, you know what? I was going to a gym here in Barrie from my hometown, and I saw UFC 3 on video. So my friends kept on pushing me to get into this. You can do this, you can do that. I didn't even know anything about anything. I was just a big, strong kid that had a no-quit attitude. But then they get me on this thing, and next thing you know, I'm in the UFC. We were watching tapes on all these different techniques and this, and at the end of the UFC, they flashed up to buy paraphernalia, shorts, this, that, and the other shirts. You can call the UFC and flashed up a number, and my friends took down the number and called right away.
And the rest is basically history at this point, and everybody knows your famous knockout debut from UFC 8. And for people who are wondering, that wasn't actually a fluke. That was something that you and your team had actually planned to do to Paul Herrera. So just kind of tell us how that came together, how that game plan was put together.
You know what? UFC was in San Juan, Puerto Rico. And from the time we got into Puerto Rico and went down to the beach, we saw Paul Herrera and his group. Well, at first, you don't know who you're fighting, so you ask all around, who's Paul Herrera, who's Paul Herrera, who's Paul Herrera? So we finally realized who Paul Herrera was, and they asked around all over who was Paul Herrera in my first match, and we finally found him, and he was going over the same move all the time, just the one move, the fireman's carry. And so even when I wasn't even there, my corner would say, yeah, he's doing the fireman's carry. He's going to do, that's what he's doing, he's going to shoot, and he's going to fireman's carry. So we spent all night in my hotel room, learning how to combat the fireman's carry so I don't look like an idiot. I really didn't know how to fight. At that point, I only ever fought my sisters at home. Then we finally came up with something to beat the fireman's carry, and that was it. That's how it started.
And that was a great start to a very long career in MMA, and that eventually brought you to Japan for Pride. And I want our listeners to definitely buy the book and read more about this. But just real quick, you do address the situation about worked fights and fixed fights in Pride. So real quick, just tell us what is the deal with the worked fights over in Pride? Is that something that actually happened?
You know what? It definitely happened. Pride wanted to sell what they were doing to the audience, and they wanted a champion. Now, in order to have a champion, you got to have somebody that's beaten people left, right, and center. So they started creating stars for them that they can poster boy kind of thing. And so that's what they were doing all the time. They kept on buying fights for people to win.
I'm not sure how much you can actually talk about it, but how deep was the Yakuza involved in the Pride days?
You know what? How deep was the Yakuza? I mean, that's why the Pride fell, because of the Yakuza. The organized crime element of Pride. That's basically was the downfall of what Pride was all about. But how deep was it? I believe it was pretty deep, but who knows? I was just another fighter. That's all.
Today in 2012, unfortunately, Japanese MMA is on life support. So, Gary, what do you think can be done to revive the sport in Japan to bring it back to the level it was when you were fighting in Pride and to get it to be as big as it was?
You know what? It's just a matter of time now. Japanese things, MMA is on life support now, but it's just a matter of time because the rest of the world is picking up on what MMA is now, and mainly Canada and the United States being the sort of proprietor in MMA has gone on board now, so it will pick up in the rest of the world. The rest of the world will take off of it. Trust me. It will come back to Japan. It will be in Japan as well.
I hope it does, definitely. We're starting to see it spread over in other parts of Asia now as well, so it's hopefully only a matter of time.
There's no hopes about it. I guarantee you Japan will be a big contributor to MMA.
Now, as a pioneer in the sport of mixed martial arts, what's been the biggest change that you've seen from day one up till today?
From day one up till today, the talent. The talent in the people is just incredible. I can't believe how great people are. The first match is like, well, if you can remember back in UFC 8, I mean, for somebody to pull an armbar was hard. You had the odd person know how to do an armbar and a triangle. Now everybody, you can't fight unless you know how to do an armbar or a triangle. But the level of competition has stepped up considerably, and will maintain getting that better. Like when I went in my first UFC, I really didn't even know I had to have cardio. I had no idea that I needed cardio, but just through the luck of God, really, that held on to me, that I ended up coming second. But I had no idea I needed cardio in order to finish the fight.
So with that kind of
nowadays, guys are top-notch cardio, training top-notch. They're doing all the right things, eating all the right things. Then it's incredible. I'm so happy how this thing came.
It's been such a big evolution from way back in '93 till today. But in your opinion,
let me tell you that the $1 million paydays were in boxing.
Yeah.
But it's only a matter of time for the $1 million paydays on MMA.
Yeah, what do you think about the current situation with the paydays in the UFC? That's been a hot topic lately. Is the UFC paying the fighters a right amount of money? What do you think about that?
You know what? Of course they're not. Of course, the whole thing, with any business, the whole thing with absolutely any business is you pay little and you sell high. That's how business go, and that's how they get better. So of course the UFC is gonna pull back. But they're the top dog right now. They're the top paying dog on the block. So everything's gonna work their way around what the UFC does. So the UFC is holding back so that they're growing, right? They're trying to make the most of their buck, and I don't blame them because I'd be doing the same thing. It's all about making money.
Just to get back to your book too, one of the things you talk very openly in the book is about the brain damage that you received during your fighting career. So I wanted to ask, how has this affected your life today, and would you still have competed if you knew that this was going to be an end result for you?
You know what? I definitely would have competed. I loved what I did. I had 14 years of sheer glory. But of course, yes, I did have brain damage, and how it affected me, like my memory is gone. Anger issues sometimes. My memory is gone completely. You tell me, I'll forget about this conversation an hour from now. My short-term memory is gone. My long-term memory is impeccable. I can remember anything long. But sports are memories gone.
That's unfortunate to hear, and I'm just looking ahead to like what's going to be the future for today's generation. I mean, do you think there's going to be improvements made for fighters' healthcare as things progress in MMA?
Oh, absolutely. I think the UFC's heading up on that as well too. Dana White is heading up on that and is paying a lot of money towards that. But the thing was, most of my brain damage, I think 95% of my brain damage came from a thing in Japan I was doing there called K1.
Yep.
That's where everybody gets, the whole thing starts with, it's only ever exciting when people get knocked out. So they promoted short fights and knockouts. If you knock somebody out, you were a great fighter. If you didn't knock somebody out, then you weren't. So that's where I got caught up in that thing. I did 5 years of that, and that's where 95% of my brain damage came from. But MMA, on a different level, the thing with MMA is that how I can win you, I can beat you with a knockout, I can beat you with a triangle, I can beat you with an armbar, and it's not usually a head trauma. It's not necessarily a head trauma from MMA. That's the good thing about MMA.
And so MMA, you would say, is definitely safer than boxing or kickboxing.
Oh, it's way safer than boxing and kickboxing. Way safer. It's not even a comparison.
Now, looking back on your career, what would you say would be the greatest moment that you've had, or just rather your favorite moment that you've had in your years of competing MMA and kickboxing?
Oh, man, the greatest moment I've ever had was, I'm kind of embarrassed to say this, but the greatest moment I ever had in MMA was I had a fight in Hamilton probably 3-4 years ago in Hamilton, and both my kids were there. Both my kids were able to see it. Both my kids were there. I was happy to display I lost the fight, for Christ's sakes, but my kids were there. I was on Canadian soil. I competed about an hour and a half with my home, and both my kids were there. That was the best thing that ever happened to me.
So what would happen if either of your kids said, "Daddy, I want to go start fighting MMA"? What would you say to them?
Oh, man, I'd show them the ropes and a couple of chains.
Good to hear. So it's going to be hopefully a new generation of Goodridges in the ring.
Absolutely. But they're only girls.
Oh, well, women's MMA, it's growing. I mean, are you a fan of women's MMA?
You know what? I know Cyborg and a few other people, but I'm not a fan of it. I'm a fighting. So whether it's dog fighting or whoever fighting, I'm a fan of fighting. I'm just a fan. I love fighting.
All right, well, we're all fans of Gary Goodridge, and for all you listeners today, you guys can check out Gatekeeper, The Fighting Life of Gary Goodridge. It's available from ECW Press starting in February. You check out the review of it on the website. It's definitely a worthwhile read. I love the book. Gary, thanks so much for writing the book, and thanks so much also for coming on the show today.
Hey, no problem. No, the thanks is to Mark Dorsey, my roommate, a good friend of mine that did the book, that wrote the book for me. He's a great man. He's a PhD candidate. He's the one that really went forward with the book. He's helped me quite a bit.
Yeah, you guys did a great job.
Yeah, no problem. Anytime you want to talk, give me a call.
I will do. Thank you, Gary, and make sure you guys check out the book. Thanks a lot, Gary. Have a good night.